It was a mild morning, right? Yeah.
Good afternoon and welcome to the January 11th, 2017 Legal and Finance Committee meeting, and we will start out with roll call and determination of quorum. Here. Now we're on to adoption of agenda.
So moved.
It's been moved by Jerry Wright and seconded by Steve Lorente. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Now we're on to general public comment for items 1 through 11, and I do not have anything on the consent calendar, so we will close that. And we will move to consent items, item 1 through 11. If anybody wants to pull anything, now's time to ask. Mr. Lorente?
Item 11, please.
Item 11. I've got a motion to approve. I need a second. I've got a second. So we have a motion to approve by Mr. Wright and a second by Alder. We've got a second. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. It is. On to item 11 from the Attorney's Office. Authorize Mayor and Finance Officer to agree, should say to sign agreement, I think, for tax increment district number 78 between Yasmin Dream LLC, Bank West, and the City of Rapid City.
Make a motion to approve.
Have a motion to approve. Need a second?
Second.
Have a second. No one wants to speak, so all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Mr. Lorente was opposed. The others were ayes. On to the non-consent items, items 12 through 18. And we have two speaker request forms, one on item 12 from Mr. Tony Marshall. You have the podium.
Thank you, committee members. I'll try and be brief, lots to say in 3 minutes. I'm here seeking the approval from first, of course, Legal and Finance, and then before the council to allow me to place some non-TIF eligible items on my actual TIF application, assuming I get that far. And those are to include landscaping and some over-excavation costs. Throughout Rapid City, there's a handful of pockets of development that haven't been developed for a number of reasons. And if you're a believer in smart growth, you'll understand that there's some economic benefits to developing these infill sites, to include, I'll go over a brief sentence. Sprawling patterns of development increase travel costs, decrease the economic vitality of urban centers, increase tax burdens due to more extensive road utility and school construction and maintenance costs, increase healthcare costs due to pollution from automobile-centered neighborhood designs, and cause the loss of productive ag and forestry lands. Smart growth strategies, in contrast, can reduce development costs to both government and individuals without reducing economic activity, including the number of residential and commercial units built. So there is definitely an economic benefit to improving these infill sites within the city. And as I said, some of them have some issues, which I'll go into now. If I can draw your attention to the photos. This area is generally over in southeast Rapid City. Along the right-hand side, you can see that there's a light industrial area there that's been developed since the 1950s. And starting in the 1950s, those folks started accumulating some things in their yard, which you can see pretty evident there. I'm also the developer across that field. You can see on the left, Smith Avenue, Merlot Drive. We started that about 15 years ago. It's primarily owner-occupied townhome subdivision. Have a lot of mature folks over there. It's pretty reasonably priced townhomes. And as a developer, I also sprinkled in some duplex properties, made them one level. And those have been appealing to, again, mature folks. A lot of retired people renting from me. I have an association over there that maintains the yards. So I've developed this over the last 15 years. My last phase I ended probably 4 years ago. And I've always had this chunk right here that I haven't figured out a way to make it marketable for the obvious reasons of I can't just develop that street normally and be able to sell properties. When you look out the back window, you see the light industrial. But I've come up with a plan. And by the way, all the previous phases that I've done, I haven't sought any public funding of any kind. But this has always been the problem child, is this particular site. I will be seeking a TIF to develop this site into townhomes and one-level duplexes to provide that need for our growing mature population. Again, they like our one levels and the no maintenance. Currently, this site's 13 acres, and it generates about $2,700 a year in property taxes. And upon build-out, it'll be probably just shy of $100,000 a year in annual property taxes. So the TIF will pay off pretty well. So what I'm asking for the inclusion of in my TIF application is the only way to separate myself from the light industrial is, because of the topographical issues, is to create a partial berm, but really it's going to have to incorporate a lot of mature, significant landscaping. A 6-foot privacy fence isn't going to do it alone. I'm going to have to spade in, again, a significant number of trees. And that's a cost that I can't do without public help. Along with the soil types over there, this is definitely shale, as is most of East Rapid City. We've frankly done very well building on shale in this entire subdivision and haven't had major concerns with the soil conditions. But of course, now with the city's implementation of their new foundation requirements regarding soils, that adds a significant burden to developing the type of housing that we would like to develop here. So I'd love to answer any questions, but again, just asking for the chance to include landscaping and over-excavation within my hopefully forthcoming TIF application.
Thank you, Mr. Marshall. We also have a speaker request for item 13 from Eric Brahm.
Hello, my name is Eric Braun, 5431 Pinedale Heights Drive. Along with my partners, Jim Lettner and Peter Schmid, we too are intending to bring forward a TIF application for an apartment housing project at East St. Charles Street and nearest to Creek Drive. I echo the previous speaker's comments on smart growth and infill development, but our real focus on this is affordable housing. We anticipate building 4 buildings over 2 phases with 123 apartment units. The apartment units, I believe there were schematic plans attached to the agenda that show about a 500 square foot unit. And what we're trying to do is push the rental cost to these to start at $625 a month, which is a cost for a new, modern, safe apartment that you just won't find in Rapid City, in our opinion. And we believe that this would provide housing for people that make from $12 to $20 an hour. And there are numerous jobs in the service industry and other industries that have this wage in Rapid City. And there's limited housing options to provide a place for those people to stay. Our goal is to keep the rent costs for our tenants in that 25% of income range, where it allows someone the mobility to save money while living in a nice place that they can save for a down payment. They can save for the next place. When you're stuck in an apartment where you're spending 50% or more of your income on your rent, you're very limited on your options. So our real push here is to keep that rent level low. Now, the reason why people haven't done this, it's hard. It's hard to construct something that you can keep a low rent on, because everybody's in the same boat we are. You have to build it to the current codes. You have to build it safe, modern, attractive, and it's hard to do. So with that said, we're asking for help through a TIF on land acquisition costs, professional fees, and on-site drainage and utility improvements for the parcel. Now, typically a TIF is for public improvements, as you know. Unfortunately, that incentivizes development at the edge of town. We are looking to do a parcel that is completely surrounded, completely served by all our services currently, that won't add additional cost to the city to manage. And we think that we're providing a nice product here, and with any luck you'll agree. But that said, our request is that you send this to council for further discussion. If you have questions, please call me back up. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Braun. So I will close public comment, and we will move on to item 12. And this is a request, from Tony Marshall for the City Council authorization to allow tax increment financing funds to be used for landscaping, grading, and excessive excavation costs for anticipated Park Hill residential TIF application. And I will go to Mr. Wright. You have the floor.
I'd like to make a motion this go to council without a recommendation. If I could retain the floor for some questions, if I can have a second.
Second.
You may.
In order to process this Monday night, where are you on your, I'm going to call it the geotech or your soils analysis and your design? Who has done the, has someone done the design of going into that hill and regrading it and providing a stable structure, foundation?
Yes, Mr. Wright, it requires a 4-foot over excavation.
I'm not talking about the foundation for the building. I'm talking about if you're going to go and disturb the toe of that slope, which you're going to do, correct? You're going to regrade?
We'll regrade, but as far as the slope behind those existing townhomes we will regrade, and that's going to require some importing of topsoil, certainly, to get something to stabilize that hillside.
My question is, if you're going to, I have not been on that site for years, but I believe it's sloped somewhat like this, coming from the top down to the industrial development.
The street will be, it's a north-south street that would be going
Yes.
in there. And then as far as from the townhomes down to the light industrial, yes, those townhomes are elevated probably by 100 feet, I would say, over
All
the...
going to be on fill on the south side of the east side?
We're not going to be in any fill. No, none of the structures will be in any fill.
Would you be cutting into the hillside? Some?
Slightly, we'll be cutting into the hillside. I can certainly provide a grading plan before
That
Monday
would be
night.
good for us to look at Monday night.
Please.
And I think that's the biggest question I have for you. Thank you.
Thank you.
We have no one else in the queue. Now we do. Alderwoman Modrick.
Thank you, Chair. One of the things I had an opportunity to do yesterday was to take the ride with Tony to actually see this, because it doesn't show well topographically, but it really does when you get out there. And the portion of it that he's going to be developing isn't hillside slope. It's more of a rolling that goes up to the hillside where the current development is. One of the things that I am glad to see is that we've got more and more of our developers coming forward and looking for smart growth or affordable housing, and this is just so important to our community. Now we've got to find a way, because we have a need, to get these placed in these locations where they wouldn't have any purpose at all unless we find a way to expand them and create some form of housing. So I'm glad that we're having these presentations, and now we've got to figure out how we can make sure these developments happen to get our citizens into homes that they can afford.
Thank you. And Mr. Wright, you have the floor again.
Tony, if you could come back up to the podium, please. I'm trying to ask questions that will help us understand and be able to maybe move on this thing. But who is you may not want to disclose who your geotech is, but could you have a discussion with them and be prepared to discuss with us an analysis of that site for stability? I'm not talking about the foundations, because you're going to have to meet that, but South Rapid is full of places where soil is sloughed off those hillsides, sitting there on top of other stuff that could possibly slough off it because of water and soils and all that. Legitimate concern, and I will raise that question again Monday night. So I just wanted to let you know that we need to talk about it. Even though you may not disturb it, by loading it, you may create a problem. Okay?
Yep, I can shed more light on the geotech. It's American Engineering Testing, and we certainly have a track record, Jerry, in that subdivision over the last 15 years on building just like what we're going to be building on. And I think successfully. I'll let staff
And I'll get
answer
out
that
look at the
question.
site on the ground before then, so thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wright. We have no one else in the queue now. And we do have a motion to send to council without recommendation. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Item 13, Request from James Letner for City Council authorization to allow tax increment financing funds to be used for land acquisition, on-site professional fees for architecture, mechanical, electrical engineering, structural engineering, and soils, and on-site and utility improvements for anticipated East St. Charles Street affordable housing TIF application. And Mr. Wright, you have the floor.
I'll make a motion this goes to council without recommendation. If I could have the floor after a second.
You may, and we have a second.
Thank you. Mr. Lettner, or whoever you would like to speak, or Mr. Brown. This is kind of an unusual request, and I have concerns that are different than with Mr. Marshall's. And I just got to think about this for a while, just to let you know, because we're walking into an area, and it looks to me like we're asking for repayment of items that are not normally traditionally handled in a TIF. So we're going to think about this one, okay?
Yes,
think
sir.
about it before Monday night and be prepared to answer questions. Thank
Yes,
you.
sir.
And Alderwoman Modrick, you have the floor.
Thank you. I just want to say to Eric and the developing team, Mr. Lettner, that having gone out there and looked at this, it's more than a parcel, it's really a great project opportunity. It's got, within walking distance, shopping and groceries, and just really fits the needs of affordable housing customers. And I wouldn't have seen that visually as that becoming an apartment complex for affordable housing, because it almost looks commercialized. But I think it's exciting that that would be in a location where you really could bring those that may need to get to the resources around them. So thank you for that. And I think it'll be an interesting conversation on Monday, because this is a new challenge to us. And we appreciate, or I appreciate, that you've brought this forward to us. But a great location for affordable housing.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alderwoman Modrick. And Alderman Wright, you have the floor again.
Questions for you Monday night that come to light after that. What have you got a dollar figure on what you're going to be asking for through the TIF, and what's the valuation of your project when it's done? And have you decided, is the TID for the project only going to be your project?
I'll start with the first one. We're probably around $750,000 is going to be the ask. The valuation for the project at finish looks close to $7 million. And I got to be honest, I didn't understand the third question.
The boundaries, has the TID been defined? Do you know what that's a tax increment district?
Yeah, the boundaries will be the existing parcel.
Just your parcel.
It would include the existing Market Square commercial development. It's currently a single parcel, and for the ease of essentially not to try not to split a parcel at this point, we're leaving it over the entire parcel.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wright. No one else in the queue, so we have a motion to take to council without recommendation. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion passes. Item 14, approve resolution number 2016-103, a resolution declaring intent to annex for property generally described as being located east of Elkvale Road, north of Twilight Drive, west of Reservoir Road, and south of Homestead Street. Second. Have a motion to approve and a second. No one in the queue. All in favor? Oh, Sarah, go ahead. You have
If I might just point out, there are two decisions that we're looking for. One has to do with the approval of the resolution itself, and the second has to do with payment to the Rapid Valley Rural Fire District. So I just want to point that out when you get ready to make the final decision.
Mr. Wright, you have the floor now.
Sarah, the question for the Rapid Valley Fire District, is that the annual fire district assessment, or is it a lump sum payment, or what is it?
The council would have some choices as to how they handle that, but the finance office has given us direction that a lump sum payment would be preferred.
Okay, thank you.
Alderwoman Modrick, you have the floor.
I have a question for Sarah. I know we show as well in some of the documentation that we've had that there is some assessing that would be done to the property owners when it's annexed that would include the payoff, or is the payoff is already being, is that already coming out of their tax assessment now?
Yes, it is currently coming out of their taxes that they pay as a county resident. I don't know if it's the fire admin or rural fire, but those property owners are actually already paying towards that debt. So the question is, if the city removes this property from the county's jurisdiction, do we pay off that debt, or does the county continue to level that, to levy that to those property owners?
So if we pay off the debt, then we in turn levy the property owners?
If we pay off the debt, we only levy our municipal taxes, which includes fire protection. So basically, we're paying this, and then that's that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Wright, you have the floor again.
Questions bring questions. The fire district will be amended to exclude this area from the Rapid Valley Fire District, and it will then become Rapid City Fire District, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. We have a motion on the floor to approve and a second. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion passes. Item 15, authorize mayor and finance officer to sign an agreement with the Center for Public Safety Management for a comprehensive analysis of the Rapid City fire and EMS services. Have a motion to approve and a second. Nobody in the queue. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Mr. Lorente is opposed, and 2 ayes from Modrick and Wright. Item 16, approve special event permitting process. Mr. Wright, you have the floor.
I'll make a motion to approve, but I have a question, so I could have the floor afterwards.
Go ahead.
Just a second. Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. Just for the record, and I understand from the document that I read that this is only for events on city-owned property, correct?
Correct.
And right-of-way, but it's not for like Dove Christian or any of those things. It's strictly our.
That is correct.
Okay, thank you. That's my only question.
Thank you, and we have a motion to approve and a second. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion passes. Item 17, approve resolution number 2016-096, a resolution adopting a conflict of interest policy for elected and appointed officials. And Alderwoman Modrick, you have the floor.
I'd like to make a motion to approve and retain, all right. The one portion of it I need to ask is, on the approval of this, there was the secondary, I guess it was an ask of the council if we wanted to do annual forms, and on my motion, it would be that we exclude annual forms.
Is that a question that you want to ask to our city attorney, or is that a motion you want to add to this?
Let me ask him something.
Okay.
Thank you, Chair. So Wade, by adopting it as we are right now, it's already excluded, and we would have to amend or add that to this?
That's
because
correct.
It's not there now.
As I'm understanding your motion, it's to approve it as it's attached. There was in the option on the agenda summary, there was an option to add additional language that would have an annual disclosure form. And so
Very good.
your motion does not include that, I think.
Thank you. My motion holds then. Thank you.
Mr. Lorente, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. And if I may, I'd like to ask the city attorney a question as well, as a follow-up, I guess.
You may.
I'm trying to discover what added effect the annual form would add to this resolution, if you would, please. If you can just tell me what effect that has. And we're adopting the resolution, so we're abiding by it by doing it correct, or I'm just wondering why the form. What does the form add to this?
The form would be a procedural kind of check on enforcement of the policy. It would be an annual check-in with all of our appointed and elected officials. that they would provide this information. I think the policy is fine with or without it. We just wanted to present it as an option. We looked at some other cities' policies, and that was something that they had. Some of the cities have incorporated an annual disclosure form, and we just wanted to make that available as an option.
So does the attorney's office have a recommendation or a preference here?
I don't think so.
Okay.
They really just are different options, and I don't have a preference. I don't believe Joel has a preference either.
Okay. I just wonder if that might weigh in Monday night at the meeting. If I just wondered what effect it had and what value added it would be, or if it was necessary. I think the attorney's office weighing in on it would help too, with some reasoning. Would be great for Monday night.
Okay.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. No one else in the queue. We have a motion to approve and a second. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion passes. Item 18, introduction and first reading of ordinance number 6153, an ordinance to amend provisions concerning permitting for parades and special events by amending Chapter 12.20 of the Rapid City Municipal Code. Move to approve. Have a motion to approve and a second. No one in the queue. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion passes. Need a motion to adjourn? So moved. Have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? We are adjourned.